So this is Khazan, the First Berzerker. What a boring name. I guess it hits harder if you're into the whole dungeon and fighters thing. I'm not. I didn't even know this was part of a bigger franchise. With all the phrases and lore information the game just spills everywhere, I first thought that this was based on some Korean folklore or something. So when I did some research, I found out that there is this long-running online brawler franchise. Already the first trailer I saw at the Game Awards didn't really impress me. It looked like a generic action game with the standard dark anime style presentation, lots of meaningless fluff to give off the impression of a well thought out world and story, topped off with an uninspired title. So I didn't really follow the game. Well, until it released, and some guy I talked with at a gathering mentioned it and recommended it as a soulslike. So I gave the demo a try, and so far I like it. As I said, this is yet another Souls-like, more precisely a Sekiro-like, with an emphasis on more aggressive combat and timed blocks and dodges, as opposed to Dark Souls' more methodic combat. And I have to say, I'm at a point where I prefer this approach over the classic Souls style. I had my problems with Sekiro when it released, but I've been warming up to this more fast and flashy and above all parry-focused style. It took me some time and it was kind of a gradual progress. I still wasn't fully there in Steel Rising, but I utilized the hybrid system in Stranger in Paradise more and more the longer the game went on. I began to slowly acclimate to it in Lies of P and preferred the active block in Bleak Faith Forsaken to regular blocking. With Stellar Blade I have fully opened up to this playstyle and I'm now enjoying it a whole lot, with the latest game in this style I played having been Rise of the Ronin. So I felt right at home with Khazan. I wouldn't have if this were my first game in that style. But the same is true for the whole Souls-like genre. I didn't warm up to Demon Souls at first, and Dark Souls as well didn't really grab me. I mean, the dungeon crawling and the atmosphere was really intriguing, but I just didn't understand what the game wanted me to do. It took me until Bloodborne where I got really invested, even though I still didn't understand how anything worked in these games. And with Dark Souls 3 it finally clicked and I became a huge fan of this type of game. So yeah, sometimes it just takes time to learn to appreciate something. The guy I spoke to said this game was at the far end of his comfort zone when it comes to Souls-likes. So I was afraid that this was a completely trial and error, ultra fast, reflex demanding, frame perfect kind of affair. But that's really not it. I mean, there is the tried and true die a bunch of times to learn the enemy's movesets philosophy we all know and love from the Souls games, but this game is rather lenient when it comes to the timings and checkpoints are found in abundance. At least during the demo, while the challenge is certainly there, this game isn't all that hard when it comes to this genre. Oh, I died quite a bit, mostly to the chapter boss that concludes the demo. But there are plenty of opportunities for comebacks during an encounter, there are lots of ways to approach any situation and avoid taking damage, with the plentiful checkpoints, managing your health and healing isn't all too hard. This game even puts your lost experience, another staple of the Souls games, outside of the boss rooms, like Lies of P, so that you don't have to commit to fighting for the next hour just because you don't want to lose all of it. And you just have to move close to it, without pushing a button and without having your character stuck in an animation, which makes it even easier to get your stuff back. Yeah, you're even given a bunch of experience for free, just for attempting to fight a boss, so if you're stuck at a boss fight, you even slowly level up and grow stronger the longer you take. Not sure if that was needed, but it's certainly a way to reward the player for working through a challenge and, well, at least it's a good alternative to grinding for a handful of stat boosts to have a bit of an easier time against the boss. Though I have read in some user reviews that the game starts off pretty strong, but throws cheap traps and ambushes at you in later levels, with lots of repeating enemies or at least enemy types, often in areas where you don't have much room to maneuver and where one misstep can lead to instant death. So I guess be aware of that. So far, level progression has been rather linear, with some alternate paths or side paths towards goodies along the way. So the best approach for this kind of game. You want a carefully planned out level design. You want the enemy encounters tailored to the specific point in the level, to the peculiarities of the environment, to, like, the point within the arc of suspense. And the game does a well enough job. Not remarkable, not remarkably bad, just competently. Sometimes enemies, especially enemy reinforcements, are cleverly hidden, just so out of sight, but the observant player can deal with them beforehand and get an advantage. Some enemies, like these monkey thingies, tend to linger around traps to goad you into them, and this is a rather consistent occurrence. Like, the soldiers you fight are rather straightforward for the most part, but these monkeys always have something up their sleeves. So just seeing the kind of enemy before you hints at what might lie ahead. There's still enough enemies cheaply hiding around corners though. But there's also some little stories playing out with the enemy encounters. Well, at least there's a hint of it. Like that soldier fleeing from a cave screaming because there's a monster inside. And he's even hurt, he only has a sliver of health left. This moment is meant to appear somewhat dynamic, and I mean, the illusion holds for the first few moments when you encounter him. But as soon as his little animation is over, he returns to normal engagement mode, draws his weapon and assaults the player. He even followed me back into the cave he just fled from. So much for that moment. A cute idea that hasn't been taken all the way. Just a bit further, there is some enemy infighting, where the soldiers battle one of the Yeti mini-bosses of this area. But again, not much comes from this, and the game isn't designed around such scenarios. Enemies tend to aggro on the last combatant that hit them with an attack, so they arbitrarily attack the player or other factions without any regard for tactics. Here, the soldiers that are in a brawl with the monster should keep attacking it, since it is the greater threat. But keep their distance from the player and try not to let the player get behind them. And maybe get a cheap hit in whenever they have some distance to the Yeti. The archer, on the other hand, should just go for the player. He is in no immediate danger from the Yeti, so he can fully concentrate on killing the player and by that saving his comrades. Maybe after killing the monster together, the soldiers could just pause for a moment, weighing up their options before fighting the player. That would be a neat moment. But no, it's just the same weak system that has been criticized to death in Dark Souls. This isn't a huge strike against the game, it's just that they already included these neat little scenes, but didn't do that much with it. So far at least. The combat is centered around 3 combat styles: dual wield, spear and greatsword. So there's a bit less variety with the combat styles from most Souls-likes, but this also means there's not as many different weapons with slight differences to juggle, which in turn means that it's less likely to level up wrongly just because later, more interesting weapons require completely different stats. Also, all weapons are based on 2 skills, the dual wield on strength and willpower, the greatsword on strength and proficiency, and the spear on willpower and proficiency. So even if you aren't specialized for a weapon type, you might still have enough ranks in the other skill, so you still get some use out of it. But since the game streamlines the weapon selection, it can totally go out on item drops. This here is a game that commits the cardinal sin of leveled equipment, so you will find multiple instances of the same armor, just with different levels. So this is once again a game where the leather and fur armor that covers every inch of your skin can have a lower defense than the same few leather straps from the start of the game, because this version has a higher level. Same goes for the weapons. It's not as bad as in Team Ninja games, where a million equipment pieces drop every few minutes, but it's still something that annoys me in here. Why can't the items just have static attributes with different equipment pieces favoring different gameplay styles? Or being required for different strategies, you know? Like in Demon's Souls. And maybe only have a tier system for actual upgrades through a blacksmith or enchanting system. I prefer it when every piece of equipment feels special, not just like a temporary throwaway resource I soon replace with the next linear upgrade. As for the actual fighting, everything you expect is here. We have fast and heavy attacks as well as charge up attacks to break an enemy stance. Also, your attacks come with combo chains that can be upgraded through their respective skill trees. And there's also special abilities that can either be fired off through a hotkey and require a replenishable resource, or are situational maneuvers like follow-up attacks and counters and the like. There's some really good variety with those, distinguishing the 3 different playstyles even more from each other, not just with their weapon speeds and animations. When you're not aggressively attacking, you can defend yourself by either blocking or dodging. even aggressively defending with timed blocks or dodges, opening up more options to retaliate or dealing massive damage to the enemy's stamina gauge. And yeah, this is once again a game designed around depleting the enemy's stamina. Your own stamina works as is by now well known and expected, but depleting an enemy's stamina gauge opens them up for a finishing blow, which I guess also is an established and expected mechanic at this point. There's also sneak attacks and plunging attacks, so yeah, everything has been accounted for. There's even a handy ranged attack always just a button press away. Fighting feels good and responsive. Enemies telegraph their attacks rather clearly, so it's not too hard to anticipate their actual strike. And so far, attacks don't track the player too much, so evading attacks doesn't require frame-perfect dodge rolls, which I very much appreciate. Though sometimes the area of the attack isn't all that obvious, making it harder to evade. But then again, this game does emphasize on blocking over dodging. I had a good time with the demo and I am now very much interested in the game. Not so much that I need to have it right now, but I guess I will get it rather sooner than later. There's nothing new or groundbreaking in here. It's a competently made Souls clone with some fun and exhilarating combat, helped in huge parts by the flashy attack animations. The art style is fine, though I think sometimes the anime models clash a bit with the grittiness of it all. And this game seriously needs some amputations and decapitations. Like with how brutal some of the attacks and especially the finishers are. Get some gore into this. It would certainly fit the mood of the story. So yeah, maybe all goes downhill after the demo and that would be a shame, but from what I've seen and experienced myself, the game is a whole lot of fun, and I would certainly recommend it to fans of the genre. So with that, I wish you a pleasant and joyful day. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.